you
Okay.
for agreeing to let me just ask you a few questions about your involvement with Black Lives Matter. How did you get involved?
Well, the spur of it was the murder of George Floyd. That really woke me up, and I decided I would do something, but I had no idea where to start. And then I was part of an educational charitable organization called More to Life, and a Black woman had raised the issue that, you know, what was happening within that organization was no one speaking out. So there was an initial international meeting online, which I went to, and I heard Malika speak. And I thought, right, I think I'm being guided to this woman. And so I contacted her and asked what I could do. What could I do to support Black Lives Matter movement? And that's how I got started.
So are there many Black people where you live?
No, it's excuse me, ma'am. It's a white man's country. It's actually, it's in Colchester. No, there are not. My initial thing was I really wanted to do something with the police to raise awareness of the police. And then I thought, yeah, here am I. I'm shielding anyway, not going out. What can I do? And so I was amazed to find out what I could do. And as a white woman, of nearly be 80 in a couple of weeks, what can I do? And so off I went anyway, like a roller coaster after that.
And what have you been discovering? What do your family think about your involvement?
Well, initially we have a Zoom call every Sunday, and I have 3 sons, and they're married and have a grandson, and so they often use it for a lot of banter, you know, particularly you know, telling jokes and what I've been doing this week. So I shared what I was doing, and at the time I felt absolutely shattered to discover, you know, my own ignorance really, and also the pain of so many Black people, not, well, certainly a history. I learned more about the history, but also every day now. And so I shared that, and you can imagine how it took the tone of the conversation into a completely different place. But I just kept with it. Each week I would report what I'd learned. And lately, yeah, I've discovered how much my own children know, and that they are involved in training courses. They've actually running training courses over the last few weeks. And speaking to my grandson. So this has become more normal now in our family to talk about this. And actually last week, one of my sons said something about it, what the police had done, and he said they would never do that to a white group. So it's becoming, if you like, normal. Whatever, been discovered that I see things through white lenses. And thanks to Sue, who delivered not only today, but something on a previous workshop, which really had a kind of, talk about the scales fall from your eyes. And not just that, a physical reaction that has woken me up to and been extremely uncomfortable. And I'm extremely grateful for that.
Thank you very much, Colette, for sharing your journey. I think it's encouraged us that it's never too late to start. and that you can make a difference starting where you're at in your own family.
There are a few other things. Do you want me to say that? I can add to something that Sue was saying about reading. I like reading. I've done a great deal of reading, which again is been very impactful to empathise with Black people, to stop believing that I know what I see is the truth, but to actually really listen in a very different way. Also, I buy books for people and then have a discussion with them about the books. And I am in a group that invites speakers, so I've raised it there. So starting where I am, and not where I would like to be, but starting where I am, step at a time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Colette. Thank you, Jane, both of you. That hopefully leads us nicely into the feedback from our groups. And I will invite, let's go to gallery view maybe, and I will invite anyone from group 1, which was our Black sort of breakout group. It was slightly larger than most of the others. They seem to be talking quite happily. Didn't think they were too large a group. So anyone want a feedback from group 1, please?
Our feedback from group 1 made lots of there was a lot of conversation, a lot of rich points that came out. But the first main thing that we said was that it should not be necessary for Black people to educate white people about what racism is or why it exists. That's been happening for too long, but now is a time for white people to have those conversations within and amongst themselves. So to take responsibility for shaping the argument proactively, but that's not to say that we're giving them responsibility, because it's everybody's responsibility. But Black people and people of colour need support to make that journey, and the support comes from forums like this. Just because the disempowering experiences have gone on for so long. Yeah, so the first point was about white people moving things forward. The second point that we talked about was about anger and the Black people being labelled as angry as a way of silencing them. We felt that anger was an important part of resistance. And it was just about, it was calling out what's going on. For instance, the disproportionate number of Black children that are excluded from schools when alternative measures could be explored, and disproportionate numbers of Black people are in prison. Now, if we're not angry, then nothing happens. And, often, Black people are labelled as angry, whereas a white person would just be addressing an issue. And so you see the difference there. And one person in the group gave a really powerful personal example of her being at university and her lecturer actually saying, look, as Black people, you will be labelled as aggressive. You're confident people, but you're going to be labelled as aggressive. And you just need to be really aware of that, because white people are not going to be labelled in the same way. They're more likely to be labelled as positive. And so, that was quite interesting, that whole issue of anger and, what we're doing with it, because it's about, being stereotyped and pigeonholed and refusing to accept that. And the last point we talked about was, the family and how and white people talking about this within their families because that's where it all starts. You know, our values are shaped at the ages of 7 and again at 20. And, you know, if our values are racist or undermining of people of colour in any way, then we're going to take that out into our world. Yeah, so, I mean, we just felt that in terms of white people, you know, really being serious, showing that they're serious about anti-racist agenda, you know, they could start, you know, start right from where they are. Did I miss anything out?
That's fine. Thanks, Andy.
Okay.
3 good points there. Shall we go to group 2, please?
Hello, I'll try and sum up what was, I think, a really good kind of discussion, and we were, I think, wowed by Sue's contribution, and it had us all kind of thinking very hard. I think that one of the really key things was why, as white people, we kind of there's an assumption that that's the kind of the norm, or that's the default position, and having to kind of train ourselves to acknowledge what goes with the kind of white lens, really, and realize that it isn't a kind of neutral position at all, and that why does this happen? Well, the whole business of having to, that if any group that is in a position of power, it is unattractive because of our kind of natural greed or narcissism or sin or whatever, to be able to hand over willingly and that power. And so we thought that was an important thing for us to understand and to be able to acknowledge, that those who are in positions of power, and therefore in this instance we're talking about kind of white people, having to relinquish some of that power, hand over the microphone. I think we were also talking about different groups who obviously do experience racism and do experience injustice, and we needed to remind ourselves that the particular focus at the moment is about black and brown people, so that whatever the injustice is, they're kind of further down the queue, really. But it's an interesting idea that for all of us as people of faith, we've got such a strong sense of what justice is in so much of our scripture and so much of our learning, and yet it seems to be that with each different group we have to relearn it, what it looks like for this group, what it looks like for this next group, and it just seems very peculiar. One of the phrases that somebody in the group said, if we could just learn to meet people as they are, I see you, I hear you, and that as a kind of starting point, rather than, and I suppose that's also meaning that we're not kind of leaping to assumptions or stereotype views that we've kind of taken on board. What else? Yes, and the whole business that it doesn't matter whether you know, wherever you are in terms of a place of faith or what have you, but that white people, there isn't a neutral position. White people have got to take responsibility for their part, our part, in the situation of racism as it is at the moment. In the same way that silence, by being silent, it isn't that you are, you know, silence means that you are actually making a choice, you're making a decision, you are being complicit. I don't know if anybody else wants to add. any
No,
back from group 2.
I think that's fine. I think you've illustrated those points very well. Thank you, Laurie.
Thank you.
So, and group 3, please. Anyone from group 3?
Oh, sorry.
Was I in group
That's me.
3?
I've just unmuted myself. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Kevin.
So I suppose most of us start from our own history, and it's very easy simply to use your own history and make errors, make mistakes. In this area, maybe a lot of anger, a lot of shame, and it'd be good to forgive yourself, treat yourself kindly, and perhaps that's the basis for moving on. Use small steps where you are. It's been mentioned before. You simply don't know where a small step will lead. Educate yourself, relatives, your groups. Somebody even mentioned University of the Third Age for anybody else. And lastly, I think there was an interest in, I am a person of colour, whiteness, and I would welcome being directed either website, online, or books or anything, in terms of everybody becoming a person of colour, if you like, towards that. I mean, that may be way just no more than a fist on the horizon. But the whiteness as a person of colour, I myself am particularly interested in. That's me done. Anybody else want to?
No,
Okay.
try and keep it to, unless there's something glaring, we'll keep to a one spokesperson from each group. Otherwise, we're going to run out of time again, which we might do anyway. But thanks, Kevin. That's great. Group 4, please. Anyone from group 4?
Warren, I don't know which group I was. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
I think I'm reporting for group 4.
I think you're group 6, so thanks, Anne. You're on.
Yep.
I hope.
First of all, we were really grateful for Sue's 7 tips, and we began to talk about understanding the anger of Black and brown people and the stereotype of an angry Black person, and saying how long it's taken us to realize that there is a very, very long history behind all that. But we can be an ally by recognizing the reason for the anger. And we can all be angry too about the stories that we hear. And we do need to step in and speak up in the same way that we might ally ourselves with children who are in a different, sorry, I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but young people who are in a difficult position and need help and support. And that's a way in which we can do that, and that we can listen to ally ourselves. And we did realize that as white people, we're prone to analyze and not sympathize or empathize. But we were very clear that all humanity is one and we are all equal. And our second point was about childhood, and again, how long it's taken us to realize that the stories that we heard when we were little, like Black Sambo and Epominandas and having Topsy Dolls, were all about references or inferences that little Black children were a bit stupid and not behaving sensibly. And again, it's taken years to come to recognize that as adults, and how it probably has definitely influenced our thinking as we've grown up. Also, one friend spoke about how ironic it was that Christianity somehow grew into being something that was white and superior, when in fact that is the opposite of its actual teaching. So I suppose really for both of those things, it was little insights as we grew up and how long it takes us to recognize things and understand them. And then finally, it was a contribution by a friend who was married to an Iraqi, and it was an issue about place, that when they lived as a married couple in hospital accommodation, they never ever experienced racism, because it was a multinational group of people. But when they moved into their own house on a housing estate, that's when it happened. So we thought there perhaps is an idea of place and people being where they were supposed to be, and therefore we can be neighbourly allies if we are aware of a family moving in near us who are mixed race or black or brown. Would anyone like to embroider on that?
No, they wouldn't. I'm going to be ruthless. So thank you, Anne. That was brilliant. That was, I think that's fed through. If there's time for any extra points afterwards, we'll do those. Group 5, please.
Talked about their experiences of confronting whiteness, and John and Jenny told us about a group of school children. I think there were 13 who were put into a group a bit like we've done tonight, with white children in one group and mixed race and black children in another group. And the black and mixed race children had no difficulty at all in talking about the experience of blackness. And the white group didn't know what to say. They just said, we're white. And I think we talked a bit about if you're in a position of relative power, or if you're in a position where you're treated as the norm, in a way you don't have to think about your experience, you assume it. We also talked about, I'm sorry, it was a very interesting and complicated discussion, and I probably oversimplified. We talked about the complexities of different contexts in which we're or living, Dorset, or being very different from, say, Manchester, but also how whiteness is itself not always a comfortable identity, or an identity that is simply to be accepted, that we need to think about that we need to understand and recognize how having diverse experiences is enriching, and that the problem, for example, of the example of having a figure like Captain John Moore to represent Britain, when a young black clergy person suggested that a black person couldn't occupy that role, the Church of England jumped on him. And we need to start to think about how we can have a culture where different groups can represent us, as it were. Sorry, I think I made a bit of a garble of that, because we had, as I say, quite a long and complicated discussion. But I think we finished with something about the importance of some of the stuff that Sue was talking about, of listening to each other and of learning from each other, and of challenging our own whiteness. Sorry, other people might want to come in.
I think that was perfectly well explained, Margaret. I think that came over clearly. Your signal varied once or twice, but if people could hear that, I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my computer's not great.
No, it's the internet. It's held us through many months, and occasionally goes up. But we heard pretty much all you said there, and I think that was perfect. Thank you. Group 6. Thank you, Margaret. Anyone?
Hi, I'm just going to feedback. I'm afraid we were the only group who had the question in the end, because the question we were originally going to pose in each group was about what's already happening around racism, what you're already doing. So we had a good discussion around that. We had someone from Manchester Buddies Centre talk about White Affinity Group that they're starting to run, which I certainly am really interested in, because I've been reading Ruth King. Then the White Affinity movement is an interesting one. So they're doing that. The Buddies Centre, we heard from Disley Quakers, and we've heard from them previously about the burning down of their poster, the Black Lives Matter poster, and how they've engaged the community then in positively challenging that in different ways. We heard about brown privilege and that being challenged as well in terms of culture and background, colonialisation and conditioning. And that was being challenged by a brown colleague in both her professional setting, which is a therapy setting, and in her community. She also mentioned a great resource, which is a woman called Valerie Kaur, which is K-A-U-R, who's doing some work called Revolutionary Love. And I think it needs to go on our resource list. Because that it is incredibly challenging, and it's ways of bringing us together from a heart, with a heart connection, really. And I think that could be something we look at in the future. They were the three things that we came up with. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Yes, Revolutionary Love is very big in sort of America, but filtering over here in many ways. So may well be something for us to look at. And last but certainly not least, Group 7, please. Who is in Group 7 who'd like to feedback for us? Anyone?
It's me, sorry.
Perfect, thanks, Penelope.
I was silenced. Okay, we've got three simple things. The first is we can only change ourselves, and if you follow the Buddhists, in fact, we can only change our minds and not our bodies. So this is important. We all need to take things forward ourselves. Second thing, don't try to get Black people to tell you about racism. Become white allies and educate yourself. And then the last observation is we have to feel uncomfortable to engender real change.
Very succinct and brief, and I think that is a pretty wonderful summation. So thank you very much indeed. And yeah, so that takes us, we're very close to time, but there are a couple of small things. We want to end with the pledge. We also want to end with a quick poll as well. We have here 5 questions which we're going to sort of put up on the screen. And you can sort of click, some of them are just one answers, yes, no, or partly, or yes, no, or not yet. And there's one question that you can actually opt for more of them. So I'm going to launch the poll. Each question will come up very quickly. So you have a few seconds to answer each one, really. So just be honest, it's all so anonymous.
There are 5 questions, it looks like there's 2, so scroll down.
Yes, there are 5 questions. You should be able to, do I have to, can't you, right. So do question 1 now then, all right, fine. And question 2 and question 3, there we go. Question 4. And question 5. So, thank you. I don't know if everyone has finished and voted, but
I can't access them.
No. Oh. So there are 5 questions there you can answer. It looks like many people have found this helpful for almost 80% of, it is over 80% now. Found it helpful for our own personal development, and nearly 90% are ready to commit to a specific action or actions following these. Lots of people want some support, around 40% yes and 40% possibly, or one just below, one just above. And that support includes a bit of maybe let's form a group to be part of and work with. someone to partner with, an opportunity to check in every couple of weeks or so, which we are hoping to look at and provide, or something else. If you want to be in touch with us about how that is, we can actually set up a group or find for people with partners as well. That would be very good. If you can think of what else it is you'd like, do let us know, and we will try and follow this up. And 90% of you are saying yes, you'd like this project to continue with another series of sessions. 10% aren't sure, so we will also look at that. So thank you everyone for completing that. We will hopefully be able to pick up the sort of results and answers there. So we've done that. Let's put that away. Okay, and we have the reading of the pledge to finish, which I believe Malika is going to help us with or lead us in. Do you want to share the screen, Malika? Yeah, I need you to unmute.
I've got it, thanks.
Okay, well, I'll put
Unless
it
you
on.
want to share it for others.
Yes, if anyone wants to see.
Yeah.
We can read it quietly ourselves, I think.
Yeah. Can I invite everybody to mute themselves? Thank you. Black Lives Matter pledge. Racism has no place in this world, in our country, in our cities, in our community, or in our home. We will use our voice and our platform to challenge racism at every opportunity. To our colleagues, families, and friends from the Black community, we stand in solidarity with you all. We are your pathmates, and we shall use our voices to challenge racism at every opportunity. We will look within our communities and identify where we can do better and continue to challenge those who know better. Black Lives Matter.
Thank you, Malika. Thank you, Sue, in particular for tonight as well. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Jane. But actually, thank you to all of you and those who have not been able to stay tonight till the end, and all the others. The recording will be available as soon as possible. I may well send out the Zoom link this week, but we're hoping that all of them will be available on YouTube for, I don't know how long YouTube will survive, but for a long time to come. And we'll take that from there. For those of us that are committed to action, let's do it. Let's make sure we do everything we can to end racism, to make a better world, along with all the other things we're working on. We have a poetry evening. I think it's going to be on March the 15th. A bit later, it's a Monday evening, March the 15th. I think we said we're going to start at 8 o'clock. We will send out details, I hope, this week. There will be follow-ups. We will have check-ins. We will work towards a continuation of this project. I'd like to think as a result of this, racism will end. I have a hunch that we've got a lot of work to do, and we'll always have some work to do to make this a better place. To our Black brothers and sisters who've been with us, thank you for helping us on this journey. To the non-Black, whether you are white, brown, whatever you identify as, thank you for being part of this. Let's carry on with this. And if you want to be involved in the next stage and helping to shape it, do let us know. It doesn't have to stay as a group of 4 or 5. It can grow to a bigger group. There may well be other aspects of it. So thank you for sharing this with us. If you want to go away and find out what Boris has in mind for us for the next few weeks, do so, and be safe, be well. Let's combat racism and injustice wherever we find it in our world. And thank you all so much.